Well, that was an interesting day in politics, wasn't it? Until we actually saw a press conference with John Steenhuisen, which I'm going to comment on very shortly. But actually, a lot kind of happened, and yet nothing really happened that's revolutionary or changes the status quo. I mean, that's pretty much the state of politics in South Africa. But before I get onto the main video of today, can I yet again remind you, if you haven't already, please subscribe to the channel and help me on my journey to 200,000 subscribers. So before I start this video off, I'm actually going to address an individual who tagged me on X. This is a Simon Bots. Now, apparently I used a video of his, and this was one where he asked for the intervention of John Steenhuisen in him not getting his farm renewed. Now, he made some comments to, my video by using my video in his video, which he then reposted on X. Now you can actually see he says that I used his video without consent or fact-checking it, and he asked me to remove it and issue a public retraction and apology for false and misleading statements about his case. But you see, he's retarded, because I didn't say what he attempts to suggest that I say, and he says that I said half-truth. So he's attempting to say that I said his farm got stolen or was confiscated. I didn't say that. In fact, the actual inclusion of his case into my video was to highlight that John Steenhuisen was using BEE in the agricultural ministry, which itself is against DA's principles and against the very things that he himself has said that he is anti. Don't forget, he was once the chief whip in Parliament, so he had plenty of opportunity to say, I don't stand for these things. And BEE is one of those things that he says he never stood for. So this individual then goes on to say that his entire case was around the agricultural ministry refusing to help him because of his race. Yes, that was the point and the reason I included the video. Now, the individual says that I should remove the video because I had used his video without my consent. And this is where I say the individual must be retarded, because you've just used my video to tell me that what I said was untrue. So you've used my video without fact-checking it or consent. See how this works? Now you see, when you put your video in the public environment, it's there to be used. When you go and you say on your own page, remember, I didn't find this from someone else. This is something he listed. It's his story. He put it in the public environment on X. This isn't a closed platform. It's in the public environment. It's public use now. And that's what happened. Now, what's even more interesting is that the individual then copied in Bianca van Wyk. Now, if you know who she is, she's just another one of the woke little Karens that support the current lefty thing. As if somehow, what? So what you're actually showing me is that you're a woke little lefty with the brain cell of a peanut. And you expect me to apologize to you? No, I actually highlighted your case, and you threw that back in my face by trying to make disparaging comments. And I must say, I don't find that flattering. I actually find that disingenuous. So all I can say is, no, I won't be removing the video, and screw you. In any case, let's move on to the news stories of today. So the first news story is actually around the AGOA extension, because the US President Donald Trump signed a one-year AGOA extension into law. Now, we've been expecting this for some time. I've actually made a few videos on this in the last couple of days. Now, the AGOA extension will be until the 31st of December 2026, and the extension will be retroactive. So basically, it will go backwards in time from when AGOA lapsed. This itself isn't actually really a win, because it means that a one-year extension is actually less than a year. It's probably like 11, 10 months. Now, the AGOA, as you know, will provide duty-free access to the US markets for 1,800 plus goods. Now, South Africa is actually the largest non-oil beneficiary of AGOA. The South African AGOA exports include vehicles, auto components, citrus, jewelry, and steel additives. Now, the extension was issued in a US funding bill. Now, the original proposal for the longer extension was reduced to 1 year. They originally tried for a 3-year extension, but it was reduced to 1 year. Now, a US trade representative said that AGOA must be modernized. So AGOA in its current form was probably going to last this year. It's probably going to get replaced next year with what they're classing as a modern framework. Now, this US trade representative said that future AGOA must align with US trade policy priorities. Now, remember, it's all going to be around the reciprocal trade tariffs, which apparently Trump's been trying to get South Africa to agree to dropping some of its tariffs, but hasn't really happened as of yet. And we're going to talk about that in a minute. Now, US lawmakers also introduced bills to review South Africa's AGOA eligibility. And if you've been watching Morning Show, you know all about that. Now, other US lawmakers proposed legislation to exclude South Africa from AGOA. So you got one lot saying you need to review the relationship and another lot just saying just kick South Africa out. Now, South Africa currently has 30% trade tariffs applied on it because of the reciprocal tariff regime, which means that in reality, AGOA itself, whilst we've been given this short-term extension, if you want to call it that, doesn't actually really mean anything because we still have the reciprocal trade tariff agreement penalizing South Africa at 30%. So yes, it's been extended. Does it help South Africa? No. Is South Africa in it? Well, technically yes, but it doesn't actually get the benefits because of the reciprocal tariff agreement. Now, future AGOA eligibility is actually going where it's going to become very interesting because the current eligibility relies on the rule of law, market-based economies, protection of human rights, and removal of barriers to US trade. That's actually the big one. That's why there's this reciprocal tariff issued. Now, US-South Africa relations, as you know, are currently strained because of foreign policy positions, specifically in relation to Iran, to Israel, and so forth. And that hasn't really changed. Now, diplomatic expulsions of ambassadors, now obviously of the Israeli diplomats who were expelled from South Africa, the US expelling South Africa's diplomats, none of this is really going to help. And public disputes with the US officials just continue to be the norm between South Africa and the US. If you watched my video from yesterday, you'll know that the current thing that they're trying to protest is America's approach to Cuba. Now, talking of expulsions of diplomats, as you'll know if you've been watching Morning Shot, the South African government expelled Israeli diplomats. Now, Israel has now responded with diplomatic downgrades of South Africa itself. Now, the South African leadership described tensions with the US as a Cold War. Now, the reason I've referenced Israel already and the downgrading of relationships with them is because the approach that South Africa is now having with the US is very similar to the approach that South Africa is having with Israel. So it's amazing that when the US adopts certain postures, political postures, it's Cold War. When the South African forces do it, it's progressive and humanitarian. You see how this is working. This is why nobody likes the ANC. Now, the ANC publicly opposed the US blockade of Cuba. I covered this in my story yesterday. And the ANC, as you'll know, said that South Africa's foreign policy is aligned with progressive forces, whatever the hell that's meant to me. I suppose it's all just the communist hellholes around the world that the ANC thinks that naturally are its allies because they all aligned with left-wing ideology. But you see, South Africa's diplomatic standing has declined, and the expulsion of diplomats, regardless of where they are, from the US, from Israel, from wherever, is actually reducing South Africa's influence, it's not growing it. Now, South Africa has now reduced diplomatic presence in key capitals globally because of its political positions. Now, this is leading many to suggest that diplomatically, globally, South Africa just doesn't know what it's doing. Or if it does know what it's doing, it's just ignoring those positions and allowing its global standing to reduce, which is exactly what's going on. Now, let's look at the opposition parties, because we all know that the ANC is, well, pretty much useless. So is the opposition any better? Well, if you watched the news from yesterday, you'll know that John Steenhuisen had a press conference. And I did a three-way conversation with Gareth Cliff and Ronald Close on this, on the Truth Report. If you haven't really watched that, go watch that. We kind of went through all of it as it occurred. But just to provide you with a short summary of what happened, well, effectively, John Steenhuisen confirmed that he would not seek re-election as the DA leader. And the DA Federal Congress is scheduled for April 2026, which is when they will elect a new party leader. Now, John said that the reason he was not seeking re-election was that he needed to focus his full time on the foot-and-mouth disease. John said that the DA is stronger than when he took leadership in 2019, and he cited all his achievements as being the DA entering the GNU, the DA's performance in the 2026 elections, and also the failed Moonshot Pact, which ultimately led to the ANC and the DA kind of forming a form of coalition. Now, John Steenhuisen said that the DA is winning wards from the ANC. He suggested that the DA was polling highly nationally, but the reality is very few were sorry to see John go. His actual press conference, which occurred in Durban, is symbolic because he started his career in Durban, was attended by, should we say, Durban strongmen, So that's Dean McPherson, Chris Pappas, but there wasn't really a lot of individuals who went. Now, will John actually be missed? Well, John cited these things that he's accomplished. And I say things in the loosest ways because they are actually not really anything of substance. He suggested that entering the GNU, well, it's not really an achievement, and it was Helen who negotiated it anyway. And you could say that the DA is polling in an improved way nationally, but that's really debatable. We don't really know what's going to happen in the 2026 elections, and it's possible that one of the reasons DA insiders pushed for John to step away from the leadership positions was because they're fearing massive hardings in the next municipal elections. Now, according to DA insiders, John Steenhuisen only suggested that he would step away from the leadership positions if he was given assurances of his continued cabinet role. Now, Gordon Hill Lewis is being viewed internally as the frontrunner, and according to the latest news, he says he's strongly considering running, but he really wants to stay the mayor of Cape Town. But the reality is probably going to run, and he's probably going to be the next party leader. Now, the Freedom Front Plus publicly welcomed John Steenhuisen stepping aside. They were actually the first to comment on it. And they said that whilst they were happy to see John step aside, their own growth was not due to the DA declining, but their appeal growing nationally. Their appeal being linked through to opposition to ANC policy and an opposition to ANC foreign policy. And it's their foreign policy that attracted me to the Freedom Front Plus. The fact is, it's kind of like the Freedom Front Plus at this point in time is like political orthodoxy. We get attracted to forms of political orthodoxy because it doesn't change with the wind. The DA's policy positions and what they've shown us whilst in government is that they're pretty fickle. They'll go wherever they feel is best. And their policy positions of yesteryears, their opposition to BEE, very easily swayed when it comes through to tomorrow and whether they think that their change of that policy position is politically promising. Now, as I said, DA leadership nominations have opened in February 2026. They will have their next conference in April 2026, so we will find out, actually not too far from now, as to who the next leader of the DA will be. Now, onto a different story, and this is a story that was pushed forward by South Africa's hero, South Africa's champion, that's Ian Cameron. Now, Ian Cameron posted a story of two men who had been described as VIP protectors, and those two individuals had been linked to an ANC mayor who flat out killed and murdered an SANDF sergeant, a Michael Swanton. Now, those two VIP protectors have been charged with murder and defeating the ends of justice. So what actually happened? I mean, it sounds pretty serious, right? So this all occurred at an incident location near the R80, in which an unmarked BMW with blue lights forced a vehicle off the road. Now, one accused allegedly exited with an R5 rifle, and the victim, the SANDF officer, requested proof of authority and appointment certificates. Now, remember, that's because they were in unmarked vehicles with blue lights. Now, the victim was allegedly shot in the head in front of his wife, with an R5 rifle described as state-issued weapons. Now, it's important to remember, if these guys were VIP protectors, they were using state weaponry as if they were their own personal issued firearms, which they could not have been. Now, the allegations are that the suspects may have been on the municipal payroll, which again also raises another question as to why the municipality was hiring VIP protectors. Now, it turns out that the rifle may have actually come from a traffic armory. So it now looks like they were able to get their hands on an R5 from the municipal traffic departments. And the suspects themselves are former SAPS members, but we must remember that they were working as VIP protectors. Now, the allegations are that the suspects were with the mayor at the time, and that the mayor was dropped off after the shooting, with the mayor actually having witnessed the shooting occurring. Now, the allegation is that the suspects changed vehicles after the shooting, and police have seized two vehicles, and that is a BMW X3 and a Toyota Fortuner. They've also seized the R5 rifle and two 9mm pistols. Now, we have to understand why this case is so important. First of all, Why was the mayor not charged? She didn't turn in her protectors, her public protectors, her VIP protectors, for murdering an SANDF sergeant. The next issue is, why were these two VIP protectors, who would have been Syria-regulated, using state weaponry? Why are blue light brigades still allowed? And why were these VIP protectors attempting to enforce traffic legislation? It's not their job. Now, what's happened with the mayor? Is the mayor being arrested? And is the mayor even being charged as an accomplice because it was her VIP protectors, who she did not turn in, that resulted in the death of another? But this does raise an important question, and that is, why, oh dear God, why are the mayors still allowed these private security officers and blue light brigades as if somehow they are just so important? They aren't. They are not tribal chiefs, they are servants of the state. Now, onto a very final news story. And this is the news story that French authorities have raided X's offices. Now, it's important to understand that in Europe, they're having a little bit of a powwow with Elon Musk because Elon refuses to censor X. And because of that, the European Union is just like throwing the rule books at Elon like you can't believe. Now, Elon Musk has been summoned for questioning by French prosecutors, with investigations linked to political interference allegations. And if you watched my video from yesterday, you'll remember the Malema political interference allegations. It's amazing how much we're hearing of that. I mean, this was a line invented by the Democrats, and now it's like everywhere. It's the easy get out of jail free card. Now, they're also suggesting that they are investigating algorithmic interference and deep fake content. Now, deepfake content is, well, Grok, because Grok can do image changing, and they don't like that. This came after even Keir Starmer in the United Kingdom complained that somebody put him in a bathing suit, and he didn't look very flattering, so, censor X. Now, X staff have all been summoned as witnesses, with Europol providing support to French investigators. Now, the UK and the EU regulators have opened probes into Grok AI. See, they really don't like this AI stuff. With the French investigations focusing around the platform's influence on politics, the EU really doesn't want X being used for the purpose of just generally communicating with others. We all know that a lot of news now breaks on X because it's unfiltered, it's uncensored, it's very easy to get a news story out. Legacy media quite frequently doesn't want certain news stories getting out and will actively censor them. It's very difficult to do that on X, and that's actually the crux of the matter, right? They want Elon to censor stories, and Elon says no. And so now they're drumming up all sorts of investigations and allegations in order to censor the platform itself. Anyway, ladies and gentlemen, that's the news. Let me know what you think of everything in the comment section below. And until next time, bye.